models pivoting for success, right? That's the topic. Now, just an anecdote. I mean, we are a 35-year-old company, and we've been trying. We have two very kind of successful market. I mean, two products that are very successful in the market and generate a lot of cash for us. I mean, those two products generate like 60-70% cash. On like, meaning like if you sell 100 million, we're getting like about 50 million, 60 million net profit. And like any good product company, we plow all of it back into new products. And most of it, I mean, we are still about 35% profitable, net profitable, but more than half our profits from those products, we are pumping into new products. And we've been trying our hand at new products for like many years. And just even if you just look at the last 6-7 years, we have tried at least 4 new products, and the first one we pumped in much good, making money. We lost $140 million in about 2 years, net. And then finally, we decided like that's a very tough space to be in, very difficult to make money, and so we got out of it. Now, every product, and now right now we're investing in 3 major products. I mean, one we acquired, one is organic, homegrown, kind of building out on a product that we already had, and the third one is completely new. And constantly, like I mean, pretty much every, I would say 3 to 4 months, there's some change in what we are doing, like either the market we are going after, or how we are going after, or who we are selling to, and constantly. I mean, like it's a 35-year-old product with huge kind of experience, very strong product management and product marketing teams, enough resources to go. Like I said, like we could lose 140 million on a product that we killed, not just spend. We spent about 250 million. We could afford to lose. And so at some level it's a luxury that we have, and at some level it's also a handicap that we have. I don't think we are ever, like we are not, like one of my friends said very early days, entrepreneur, pretty much fresh out of college, 23 years back. And he said, unless you're desperate, like I mean, there are a lot of moonlighting entrepreneurs, and me and 2 other friends were trying to do something moonlighting many years back, and he said, look, give it up. Either you give up your job and go full time, or just stop this whole thing about moonlighting. It's not going to work. You have to be desperate for success. And so, which is very key. Now, if just taking our example of after 2.5 years and losing $140 million on the product line, I would say losing. I mean, it's an investment. It's a better way of putting it. Losing sounds very bad. It's actually we did have very strong expectations in the market. The market also was good. Just that, like for different reasons, we decided to give it up before we could realize the value. But we had the luxury of the time, and our decision cycles are probably much longer. Startups don't have the luxury. I mean, if you're starting off on a new product, you can't wait before until you spend $100 million to realize that like that strategy was wrong. So the pivoting has to happen much faster, much shorter cycles. Like they say, fail fast, right? That's the whole mantra. There is an experiment, and like I mean, when we I deal mostly with early stage startups. How many of you early stage startups here, like less than a year old startups? Okay, mostly more than 3 years old. Okay, there are some. And like in the founder institute, I deal mostly with startups that are like probably less than a year and a half old. In all my interactions, could be at the events, at Startup Saturday, the founder institute program we're just running, or anything that I engage, or even the smash up that I help organize smash up. Everywhere it's early stage, but even there, in the first 3 months, 6 months, the first customer you meet. Most often, like when you, unlike a project environment where like somebody has written on the spec, right? You know what you're building. It's pure. The only uncertainty is engineering uncertainty. But unlike in a project environment, in a product environment, there is it's a speculative approach, right? I mean, we think there's an opportunity. Now, it could be like a product is grown elsewhere and we're replicating here, or a completely ground up new product. Either case, there's an expectation that it will pan out. So we go spend some time, we build it, right? And then we take it out to the customers, and that's where rubber meets the road. When the product, when you take it and meet the customers, suddenly, like invariably, some assumptions will come under, right? How many of you face that? In, like all of you, where the first few customers you met, some fundamental assumptions you made about your product or the market came out to be not true. Just raise hands, show of hands. It's lesser than normal. I see about 30-40% hands go up. Most often, there will be something small or big. In many cases, it's a big assumption that kind of comes untrue when you actually go start meeting customers. Even like many say, mentors tell startups, customer validation is important, but the best customer validation is like when they have to pay the money. Right? You go show, like you meet somebody, a prospective customer, and get however you get the time, spend half an hour, 1 hour with the customer, talk about your product, and they will tell you, yeah, it's a fantastic product, just go out, offer it, go out, do it, it's a fantastic product. 3 months later, you go to the same customer prospect, and then say, okay, I have the product, now will you buy it? That's where they will start saying, you know what, we're not ready for it, like this is not exactly, won't fit our business. Now, the best validation comes only when customer puts the money. It's easy to get feedback. I mean, even when there is no money, if the customer gives adverse feedback or a prospect gives adverse feedback, then something terribly wrong with the product. So that's when we should take it very seriously. But if the customer says or prospect says, yes, it's a good product, even that takes the pinch of salt. Because it's easy, like when there is no money on the table, it's easy to give advice. And it's easy to tell, like, yeah, it's good, go do it. But the best validation is only when they have to put the money. And that's where, like, even if you talk to some people earlier in the domain, prospective customers or like mentors, and got some positive validation, when you actually go meet customers that have to try it out, that's where, like, even trying it out is an investment. For an early stage startup, money is not the only validation. If the customer is willing to put somebody's time to try out the product, or to begin with even give you an extended meeting, not just a 15-minute meeting at an event, but just give you a couple of hours time, itself is an investment, so they are serious about it. And then if they go a step further and then actually evaluate, they're even more serious about it. And the last step of it is where they actually put the money. But in early stages, just even getting customers to evaluate, itself is it's an investment from their side. If they're going to spend like a couple of people spending a couple of days on it, it's a serious investment. I mean, there is real money for them. Somebody's time they're paying for in the company. And they won't do that unless they see it's easy to do a 15-minute meeting, like you bump into them at ISP Connect, they'll easily spend even half an hour with you, because they're anyway committed to being here, they'll do something. So that doesn't mean much. But at that point, you convince them or they bought into your story or into what you're doing and tell, like, I want to meet, come to my office tomorrow. That's again a fantastic validation. And like often when you read into these, like if the customer says like, yeah, let's meet, so let's touch base in a few weeks time, that means they're interested. And that's actually it's good feedback. Which means something in what you're doing, or at least what you said, as the person understood, didn't excite the person. So if you think like what you're selling is to the maybe to the pharma sector, and you meet somebody from the pharma industry, and when you talk to the person, you think that that person is a perfect prospect for you, and the person is not excited, then you have to seriously go revisit what you're doing. The first thing to revisit is like most likely the best case scenario is that like you are on the right product, but your articulation is wrong. The person didn't understand. So the first thing to review to make sure like if that's what it is, then fix the communication. And it's not an easy thing to fix. How do you even assess this? So it takes some time to meet a few people and see is that where the problem was. If you think there's a high fidelity articulation, then definitely there's something wrong with your product and offering itself. So it's serious, then it needs a serious relook, and that's essentially what a pivot is, right? The relook could be any number of things. Relook doesn't mean like I will just stop it and go do something else. That is not pivoting. That is completely, you just stop this, discontinue this and go do something completely new. Pivot is where like somewhere, some positioning, something was not in sync with the markets. It could be like, it is pharma industry, but not pharma manufacturers. My offering is better suited for pharma distributors. Maybe, that's a pivot, right? It's a business pivot. You're not changing your product. The product remains the same, the functionality remains the same, just who you're positioning it to or who you're targeting might differ. Now that's a pivot. Maybe it's the right sector. You don't have to, it is like you were talking to the right target. Like, I mean, your product fits the pharma manufacturing, but you're talking to the wrong person, right? It's like, who would make the decision? Who? Like they always say, there are multiple stakeholders in a decision-making process. There's a decision maker, there's an influencer, there's a user, right? Maybe you got the wrong person. If you're selling a HR solution that is targeted for pharma industry, maybe you should not be talking to the HR head at all. Maybe you need to be talking to the manufacturing head. Because that's where they appreciate it. Supposing like, in fact, it's one of the companies I actually made, that's only an example. So if they say like the HR system helps the operations people, I mean not the HR or the business leaders or the HR, but actual operations people manage. It could be a shop floor or it could be any of those. If the HR system has some specific capabilities that helps the manufacturing side of the business better manage the people, supposing, then your sponsor for this whole deal would be like the head of manufacturing, not your HR head or even the business head. Now, so finding the right, so it's a pure, it's not even an overall strategy pivot, it's just a pure positioning pivot, meaning who will you go talk to. Now, so that's a very, kind of a very, non-disruptive pivot. A strategy pivot may be a little bit more disruptive. I was going and I was thinking I can sell to the pharma manufacturing, but actually I can't, manufacturing is not my target. I will appeal more to pharma distributors alone. That's a strategy pivot, a little bit more disruptive. You have to change some of probably tweak the product a little bit to better suit them. Your whole go-to-market will change. Then you make collateral, assuming it's manufacturing, you have to redo the collateral, redo the website. So it's a little bit disruptive. You realize that you went and meet the distributors also, and then it turns out that even they clearly tell you there's no need for this in the pharma sector at all. Now, but you have a solution which, take this HR example, you still believe it is very good fit for the manufacturing sector. But for some reason you start off with pharma. But after the first few people that you talk to and the feedback you got from them and from advisors, it turns out that they don't need the system for whatever reasons. Those are the surprise discoveries we get when we go and actually start talking to prospects. So for some reason it is not. The next pivot may be it is still relevant to manufacturing, but pharma is not my target. So maybe I should go after auto ancillaries. Now that's a little bit more disruptive pivot. He can go all the way up to saying I can't even be in the manufacturing sector at all. And I can't even be in HR sector at all. Maybe I'm just pivoting into performance management. That's why they need you. I talk to pharma, talk to manufacturing, small scale, big scale. Finally it turns out all of them have very good HR systems, but everybody is struggling with performance management. So then you may pivot saying along of everything else, I'm going to build the best performance management system possible. Now there's a more fundamental product pivot. Now, but if you look at all of these, that's why it's called pivot, right? I mean, the whole idea of pivot is one foot is anchored somewhere. You're only just changing the other foot and turning direction. So there has to be an anchor. So if you're completely discarding and starting, then that's not called a pivot, right? It finally turns out you went all the way back one step, starting from just simple sales strategy, to the kind of marketing, positioning, and product change, and finally turns out there's just no money in HR at all. And all the IP you build, nothing is usable. I'm going to discard that and I'm going to go build an e-commerce website. That's not a pivot, right? I mean, that's completely, you stop this business completely and doing something else. So at some level, I think pivoting happens when you get some new discovery, right? Information that you discover. It's most likely when you meet the prospects, when you meet the customers. But it could happen anywhere. It could be the analyst report that comes up, something in the news. It could be any number of pivots. So there's one company, one of the early exports from Hyderabad, the current wave, not in the early wave. So MovInsync, now they're doing very well. I think they're going to raise a third round, if I'm not mistaken, of VC. They're an ISB alum, in fact. And so when they started off as rideshare. It was called I think Ride in Sync or something like that when they first started. They were looking at carpooling and ride sharing. That's why they started with. Now very quickly they realized there's not enough interest, not enough need in Hyderabad. Now traffic is bad last couple of years, but 6-7 years back it was not bad. I mean, you could come all the way from Secunderabad to High-Tech City in maybe 30-40 minutes. Now it can take you 2.5 hours. So those days the traffic was not bad, and for whatever reasons there was not enough interest. So they quickly went and then they figured out the carpooling itself there's not much interest. But if you talk about the rides per se, there was interest among larger companies to manage their company pickups and drops. So they kind of pivoted. There are similar solutions. At the end of the day, whether I find a ride or an employee finds a ride, I find a ride from somebody else or an employee finds a ride from the company provided cab. The system was more or less the same. It's about finding rides, right? And then so they pivoted a little and then got into company fleet management. And then they clicked. Now you see a lot of cars, if you see some of the IT industry pickup vehicles, you see this MovInsync sticker at the back. So that is, they pivoted and that pivot worked well. And then now they're pivoting some more. So they've kind of captured that market. Now they're looking at even broader fleet tracking. And so when you go into the field and when you discover is when there is like I said, the pivoting is essentially some assumptions you made when you were either defining the product or defining the market strategy or sales strategy. Some assumptions you made comes untrue, or some new data has come out. And then to factor that in and to kind of either fix the assumption that came out wrong, or some new data that came in that you want to factor in and then benefit from it, is where you need to pivot. So, I don't want to keep talking. I think I've talked enough, 10-15 minutes now already. Now, I just want to take some, let's see where, just any examples of where you are at. How many of you, almost 30-40% raised hands on a pivot. Now, is anybody at the juncture right now where you've gone and it could be the first version of your product or the end version or a new module that you've added to the product? It could be anything. But how many of you, anybody at that stage right now, so where you are just ready to pivot? Anybody? This is more conversation. What are the thoughts of just warm up? No? Nobody in the stage right now where you're discovering something in the field? How many of you are just getting into the market? You've just made less than 5 customers. Okay. So what's the experience so far with the first few that you talked to?
We're still confused with how we are able to, reach the market. We are launching this mobile application on augmented reality. And we went into the market, and unfortunately we could not reach the masses. Again, we restarted the whole structure again. So now the reason why I'm here is for that only, to understand how I can reach the masses.
So what was the positioning, initial positioning? When you said augmented reality, it was a technology platform.
Yes.
And from mobile, so I'm assuming you point the mobile at something and then you are getting some experience out of it.
Yes.
And so the technology is good.
Yes.
So who did you think were the first likely target? Who did you meet first?
We thought the movie industry would be the first target because in the downloads we'd be there and then we have the platform coming up. But unfortunately that didn't work the way we thought. The movie industry took it, but they didn't really understand the whole thing. We spent quite a lot of money. We did around 30 movies in Mumbai with Viacom 18 and different companies. But it didn't really kick off.
So this was more pointing at posters?
Yeah, any static image could be converted to a video format or anything. So now we decided to enter the world of education, where a child seeing any poster or anything subject related can be, he comes to specifically to that subject.
Okay, so this is a very fundamental pivot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, in the first pivot was campaigns.
Yes.
Where, not pivot, the first target was essentially campaigns, static, very structured.
Yeah.
If a movie if NH10 is taking the campaign,
Yes.
you point at NH10 logo anywhere,
Yeah.
people start playing a promo trailer
or song, anything.
Anything. The Anushka's picture will show something else, right? So it was a very the model was very different.
Yes.
Now suddenly, in that model, you didn't need any database.
No.
It's specific to campaigns.
Yes.
So very close-ended. A customer comes, like a movie producer comes,
Yes.
and then says I'm going to do this, the campaign runs for 30 days.
Yes.
They're giving you all the information.
Yes.
They're giving the markers.
Yes.
So these are the markers to point to.
Perfect.
It's very simple.
Yes.
Now suddenly you've gone, when you go to education, it's an extremely fundamental pivot.
Yes.
Now this is very open-ended.
Yeah.
When you go to education, if you say even if you say it's only about something about physics or whatever.
Any subject.
Any subject you take, even if you narrow it down to one subject,
Yes.
imagine the amount of database you need. It was a fundamental pivot. So how did you factor in?
We tied up with the Ministry of HRD and we took the content from them and we are augmenting it. But now the whole funda is how do we push it in the masses, the students to take it.
So it's something to think about. This is an extremely fundamental pivot.
Yeah.
Only thing you're retaining is the you've got all the way back.
Yes.
Only thing you're keeping from what you had so far is the technology.
Yes.
Even your the product packaging has changed.
Yes.
In the earlier model, when it comes to campaigns,
Yeah.
you didn't need your own database at all.
No.
It's just campaign, every database that you keep is very specific campaign.
Yes.
And they take the campaign out. You don't need to take the campaign.
No.
The producer will say as part of the campaign, you download this app and point at the poster to kind of have interactive experience. They are taking the campaign for you. All you need to do is a pure technology platform.
Yes.
Now suddenly you made one thing, you pivoted the domain itself.
Yes.
From movies you went off to something else.
Yes.
And then second, you pivoted even your product packaging. Now you need a database.
Yes.
Which you have to go keep it upfront and you have to keep the database current. So there's a complete business, content business, which was not there earlier for you.
No.
Now there's a content business, which is a serious thing you should assess. If is that the business, it doesn't matter where you get the content from. You get from Ministry of HRD or somewhere else.
Yeah.
Now suddenly you have to maintain content.
Yes.
It's your own content.
Yes.
Then the third problem is the whole outreach is different.
Yes.
Earlier you had to go find a producer.
Right.
And like the producer runs the campaign for you. You're a pure technology platform.
Yes.
Your market outreach was only to go find these producers.
Yes.
Now you have to go find the consumers.
Yeah.
That's a completely different side. In my view, it's an extremely fundamental pivot.
Yeah.
So unless you have some, like maybe one of the founders understands the education domain, understands outreach, or you have access to some channels, like it's a very, very fundamental pivot. So what drove you to the pivot?
Basically, we thought that is going to push us towards a lot of data information, and then that platform becomes an easy platform for putting a lot of advertisements, and that's where we make revenue out of it.
No, that is in theory, yes.
Yes.
But in practice, how did you think you would have a reach into the education sector? Even HRD content is, while difficult, maybe it is still a little bit bounded.
Yes.
Many have tried education sector, technology enabled. Right here, there are two startups, one pivoted and moved to something else, and the other one is still doing it.
Yes.
It's a very difficult sector. So, what was your confidence like in the channels?
I can't.
Okay, so that's something to seriously assess.
Yes.
Because like it is technology pivot is easier.
Right.
Even though database changes your product packaging, it is still easier.
Yes.
Two things that are difficult, you need to have one, managing content is a completely different business.
Yes.
And then like reaching out to schools is a completely different business.
Yeah, completely different.
So you need to have a good handle on both for
Yes.
this strategy to be successful.
Yeah.
So you should just assess and see either the founding team has it,
Yeah.
or you have to find some channel. Okay, I'm going to go tie up with this firm that reaches out to schools.
Yes.
So that is my channel for the market. Okay, there's one thing taken care of.
Right.
And then the other one would be like content.
Yes.
Like, okay, I'm going after only one content publisher, I'm partnering with them,
Yeah.
they have enough content.
Yes.
And like, because MHRD will give you one time, then subsequently what happens?
MHRD is going to give us regularly all the content what is.
But if MHRD is giving the content, anybody can get that content.
Yeah, anybody can get the content.
So that's again a problem.
Yes.
And like, and then they're only going to give you the content.
Yes.
You have to create the markers.
Yeah.
You have to index the whole content
Yes.
to say,
We have to do that.
reality to work.
Yes.
You pointed this, you should trigger this particular
Yes.
module or lesson or whatever.
Yes.
Now, so it is a lot of work on the content marking side.
Yes.
So you should seriously assess and see how are you going to handle these two. Like either using a partner, then who the partner is, or you're going to hire somebody, who are you going to hire, can you afford to pay? If the founding team has their expertise, who has their expertise, then I think you should assess that for the strategy to work.
So we tied up with a technology, we took over one technology company which is there in augmented reality. But as you rightly said, we are looking at a way how we can go to the schools and market and promote this thing.
Yes, and it needs a lot of focus. I mean, selling a technology for campaigns
Yes.
to the movie and advertising
It's a
industry.
different story.
And this is completely
Big
different. It's
difference.
virtually a new business.
Yes.
Only thing common between the two is the last level of technology.
Yes.
Not in the whole platform.
No.
Suddenly the database and all that comes here.
Yes.
Just the core technology is the only thing that is common between the two.
Yeah.
So just assess some of these, and that's important for this pivot to work. It's a very fundamental pivot.
Yeah.
All the best.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now that we warmed up, anybody else? Let's just take anybody that's currently in the market here, please.
Be a good experience. Our main target was connect the customers to the physical stores from day one, because we believe 99% of the business happens in physical stores. So 5 years ago, we started with a discount card. It's called Magic Card. We ran it for a year and a half. We understood that looks good, but it looks very complicated, considering the Indian business's attitude and things like that, and also customers' views towards businesses. So we understood that we can never become big with this. So we took a turn. That's when Snapdeal, etc. were also started a discount card, and then moved to a coupons model, like Groupon, etc. around 3 years ago. Still, our focus was same: talk to the businesses, get revenues, reach out customers, and try to send as many customers as possible to the businesses. Then we started with Magic Coupons. We did a lot of work there. Again, we understood that lot of competition and also not fitting to the Indian models. but it was good for Western, but again, complications from the businesses, mainly the physical brick and mortar stores. Later we understood that it's going to be very complicated unless we really make the physical store understands that we are really adding value to them. We are really sending customers on daily basis, weekly basis to them. Then discount card was not great. Still one or two customers walking in. Coupons was not great. So then we derived to a model where internet, e-commerce, and how we can use these technologies and try to help physical stores. So around 8 to 9 months ago, we started with something called Magic Price, where we build physical store websites in such a way that we replicate the physical store in their website. It's not like a typical website where few images and contact details, etc. But we make sure that that particular day what is happening in the physical store is replicated on their website. So we build it. And we make sure that we visit them every day, and we make sure that shop is. So walk into a shop is equal to visit to a physical store. And we also consolidate all these physical store websites in our website, which is magicprice.in. So it's magicprice.in will become big when we have around 15 to 20,000 physical stores of Hyderabad listed with us.
How many do you have now?
We have around 3,000 from Hyderabad, around 3,000 from Bangalore and Chennai. So technically revenues are coming up because we come up with a model where physical store website is their own. So they end up paying some amount on annual basis. But that's, end of the day, that's again not going to be very big that we knew. The very big thing is going to be Magic Price, when we have around 20 to 30% of the physical stores of each and every city is registered with us. They are selling online and things like that. So
What kind of store? What kind of products?
everything like groceries, electronics, beauty, furniture, all kind of shopping.
So here there's a big challenge in the whole catalog, right?
Right.
See, with electronics, they're all like fixed set of manufacturers, well-defined product codes and such. Groceries, how do you tag it across different stores?
Groceries is not a core area in this particular thing. Mainly electronics, furniture. It's not just about selling things, it's also telling about everything about what is happening in the shop. Example, a person wants to buy a TV near High Tech City. So all the customer wants is...
Electronics is fine,
Yeah.
but you said everything. So grocery store is what you said.
Yeah, even groceries, what we make sure that is, as of now, we are not going item by item, we are going category by category. Maybe rice, today at Ratnadeep supermarket, this is the price of particular rice. At More supermarket, this is the price. Tomatoes, this is the price at different places. So that kind of maybe top 50 to 60 products we are able to give the price comparisons at the physical stores, what is happening on every day. But groceries is not the core area, even in the long run. Furniture, jewelry, electronics, these kind of items are the core area.
But they would still not be, like when you say like you aggregate across the 20,000 stores, furniture doesn't have as a broad category, yes, but individual models it will be a more random aggregation. It is not saying, okay, for this model, this one that has the best, right?
Right.
So something to see how it will work. I don't know how it will work. See, a couple of problems, I don't know how you address this.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problem here is like, what is the average transaction volume you can get per store?
Okay. Yeah.
In thousands per month, 10,000 per month?
An average store will pay around 15,000 a year.
Yearly?
Yeah.
1.5 or 5 cents?
1.5.
1.5. So it's
Really?
4,000, roughly 1,000 rupees a month.
Right.
Now, few others that have tried this, some shut down. No, not the exact same model, but it involves like the small brick and mortar stores. Where the biggest challenge was like deals. One of them was a deals site. So they would go get deals. So I can go like I want to buy. It could be atta or it could be like a mobile phone or whatever. I can go to that site and they will tell me what are the deals in my neighborhood.
Right.
I can say give it to me just in Gachibowli area or give it to me within 5 kilometer radius. And for a given product category, they will get the deals. It's a nice solution, and nobody was doing it at the time, so it was a very good hyper-local all the way up to all cities. If I'm willing to go all the way to Dilshuk Nagar, I can even extend my range and include any range. I can go to Vijayawada if I want, if I'm willing and desperate for something. which was a fantastic product. They came undone just because the sheer cost of managing every small store. At a transaction value of over 1,000, 1,500 rupees a month,
Right.
you can't have somebody go meet them every month.
Right.
You may not even recover the 1,000 rupees that you're making from them.
Right.
And if you want to do it online, they are not that tech savvy or not interested. They won't go put the deals for you.
Right.
Right? Unless it comes to a point where like because of your deals, suddenly they're getting like a significant portion of their business, then they're motivated. But in the initial days, until the revenue numbers kick in as a significant proportion of their overall revenue, they are not motivated.
Right.
So if at no cost to them, time and otherwise if you're getting them a few deals, they're happy.
Right.
So that was a big problem for them. In fact, they shut down primarily on that problem.
Right.
It was becoming very expensive and they didn't have the staying power. So it will eventually work out, like you said, if they get a scale, it will work out where like after 1 or 2 years, if they get a scale, then they can force the businesses to put the deals themselves.
Right.
But until then, they have to have the staying power. And it involves feet on the street. One person can only manage like, not even all of Bexmoli, maybe like half of Bexmoli. If they go meet a store every week, you only can do so many stores in a day.
Right.
And like, so it was a big problem for them just to manage the feet on the street. Their model required feet on the street, but the revenue model was not supporting it. And like, and eventually it will support when they can reduce the feet on the street, but they have to stay there till then. And they have staying power. So are you hitting this? I mean, most
Yeah.
of you are hitting similar.
This is the exact situation we are also facing. But the advantage that our model has is we have a clients, around 20% of them, who are paying us big amounts, like 50,000 to 1 lakh rupees per year. Like Chandana Brothers, Padial Electronics, S-Mart, these kind of big shops. We have identified around 1,000 shops in each city who are of this kind. So they will actually help us to get big revenues every year. So we are investing that money to keep our foot on the market, because with that investment, with that revenues, we are keeping a field team of around a big number team who will actually sit in each and every corner of the city and make sure that everything is updated on the website. So in next 2 years time, we think that, okay, since we are building websites of a lot of businesses, so this will grow. Maybe next 2 years time, we will have around at least 10,000 in each city. Shops, websites built, so revenues will be coming, and we will have money to invest on Magic Price, where we can advertise it, and also by advertising we can actually send customers through Magic Price or through their websites to the shops. Then, if as I said, if a small business is getting customers through this channel, they would be happy to spend money or log in and keep posting their updates, etc., etc.
So again, this is a good, you are at a pivot right now. Now, you can go just to get the offline stores online.
Right.
It seems to be panning out, what you described in the last year and a half. It seems to be panning out. You're getting the larger ones and smaller ones are buying into the model and paying. It's an immediate revenue that they're paying just for the site.
Right.
Now, that's one way of going and do more of it,
Right.
right? And add more value. Just it's about their online presence. Can you make it more interactive, more exciting? Put some gamifying the whole thing, get it to mobile. That's one way to go.
Right.
Where it's only about getting offline businesses online
Right.
and technology leverage.
Right.
The other way to go is, as you're saying, like you eventually want your Magic Price to work. Now imagine, like once you get Magic Price going, if there's Chandana Brothers and Chandana Brothers competitors both on your platform, why will they support your platform if you're referring the competitors' products? It's something to think about.
Yeah.
Maybe you have the answer, maybe you don't. I would be surprised if you have an answer. But there is no way they'll be on your platform if they see that like you are passing deals to my competitor. Okay, fine, you are giving me also deals,
Right.
but you're passing deals to my competitor
Right.
also.
Right.
Because that becomes very tricky. It's one thing to say like we are both on your platform.
Right.
It's a technology platform,
Right.
right? It's something else like to say like I go to Magic Price, today I see Chandana Brothers as a preferred deal,
Right.
and tomorrow I see like Chenmas as the preferred deal.
Right.
Now that is not good as a business to engage with you if you're promoting the competitors.
Right.
So then you're in that process, what you're doing, you're going to cannibalize or completely scuttle your current revenue stream, which is like having Chandana Brothers as an to get their offline store online.
Right.
So there's a double-edged sword. So you should be very careful, as I said, before doing it.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to scuttle your current revenue stream.
Right.
So that's something to think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good.
The moment we get a request from the client, we send the phlebotomist, the sample collection guy, to their place at their convenient time. Suppose if they have the office at 9 o'clock, if they want by 7:30 in the morning, so our collection guy will go and collect the samples which is already in the market because all the diagnostic centers nowadays are doing home collection, sample collections. But that's not unique here. The thing is, our guy will collect the samples and the test will be done with a very fast turnaround time, and the report will be updated in our website. And again, our executive will call the client and ask for the convenient time for the doctor to visit them. Okay, if they say like tomorrow evening 8 o'clock will be good time, so our medical doctor will take a printout of all the lab tests, which is a panel of tests like blood sample selection, the regular screening test. And he will go to their home and he will do a basic physical exam and explain about the interpretation of the results. So it's basically the doctor's consultation as well as the diagnostic test, which includes a package called Master Health Checkups at Home, which I was targeting mostly the IT people. Because of the fact I thought,
But you know, like IT people believe they have a chip on the shoulder, they can never fall sick. Well, they are the ones with backaches by the age of 27,
Right.
and like all kinds of stress-related illnesses by 30. But they believe they don't need any of this. So was that a pivot, that there was a wrong target?
I don't know if I really didn't reach, I didn't really penetrate the market. I'm not pretty sure because it's too early to talk about it. But I didn't get a real good response. Probably what I was thinking, maybe there are
You did get or you did not get?
I did not get.
Okay.
That's why I was just thinking. Of course, we have a spectrum of services, other physiotherapists at home, which been happening nowadays in the market, but we want to get everything
That's
under.
something we want to think about. See, like this we are seeing even in when we look at the Founder Institute, we watch like in the two batches. We can also somewhere here. So myself, Vikram Singh was on the Founder Institute, which is early stage. Idea to first version of the startup. And 14 weeks we spend a lot of time with them. So we are watching ideas evolve very, very closely. So one thing we kind of now begin to get a lot of clarity on in the early stages, like ultra sharp focus helps. I mean, this even funny mentioned when he was here for the design summit and the Hyper summit. It was funny. He was talking about like and spent quite some time talking about, because he said like that's very important for a startup to be successful. You need to be good, very good, very, very, very good at something. Not good at many things, right? Now, it's like WhatsApp. Now they're trying to get into voice and like telephony and all, like for a long time, all the way up to and beyond their $19 million exit, they said we are going to do just this P2P messaging, that's it. Nothing else. I mean, they didn't even record and play a voice snippet, was also introduced later. For a long time, they said they're going to do this, and that's all they're going to do. And they did that well enough that they got half of India and like a quarter of the rest of the world, and then $90 billion in the bank. Now, same thing funny said, like when they went, even early investors, when they got some traction with the bus industry, the investors said that we will put the money only if you also go after flights and trains. They said no. They said like there is a lot to be done in just the bus industry. Until we crack it, we are not going to go anywhere else. And he said this kind of it is they found investors that saw value in that strategy, and that strategy increased. I mean, it did significantly improve what they were doing in the market, their penetration, their cost of acquisition, their cost of retention, everything was very, very good. And like, and usually there is multiple rounds of money all the way to the exit. And he said even at the time of exit and even at the time of him leaving the company, it was like sometime after the acquisition, he said they were still resisting going to other sectors because they still believe there is more to be done in the bus industry. Now, what you just said, like there is physiotherapy, there is at-home diagnostics, there is doctor on call, doctors coming in kind of helping with the, maybe to help to see what has the most opportunity and just focus on that. Because each of those has like, if you take like pharma alone, which I'm sure you're thinking of like delivering drugs at home, pharma alone, like the Apollos can easily come in. Right? Just day yesterday, Panish Murthy started a venture. Now, Panish Murthy coming in with with very, very deep pockets, and I know one of the co-founders very well. He's also an ISBRM, and like he has joined them. And like the team is already like a very, very high pedigree team. And then there's Panish Murthy that's driving it, and then like also with the money that he's coming in with. Now, imagine like, can anybody counter that if you're trying to get into home drug space? You can't counter that. On one side you have the Apollos that are constantly, today they deliver. My parents just call them up and they are some 3 kilometers away and they will come. They said they won't come immediately. You call them now, they'll come around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't matter. But for people that are on chronic medication, Like it's not like they are having a headache and they need it now. It's like a continuous daily medication, like okay, it's getting over the next few days. If I get it the next few days, good enough. And they deliver. Now, so if you're trying to do something, you're trying to do this on one side, you're trying to do diagnosis on the other side, which all the diagnosis centers come home these days.
That's true.
That's on one side. They themselves are trying to do what you're doing. You're trying to get physio home. That I'm not aware of anybody doing it. But you're trying to get doctors home. It may help to focus on a segment. No, that's the pivot. I mean, I understand your crossroads right now. I mean, like, because nothing has panned out yet, you don't know which way to go.
Basically, in the beginning itself, it's a home healthcare services. It's a replication of the United States home healthcare services. You have thousands of companies in US. Exactly, a home healthcare service include the physiotherapist and skilled nurses for particular diabetic foot
But if
care.
you come to think of it, in home healthcare, I'm sure the home diagnostics, the home healthcare is for seriously ill people. Right? Are you going after the seriously ill, or are you going after the more like kind of preventive lifestyle? So they are two very different market positioning. The lifestyle thing, if you're going after just the executive checkups and such, you have to go after the younger lot. Right? If you want going after seriously ill, your whole go-to-market is completely different. It may be geriatric, it may be like go find like the oncologists or anybody where like there are typical medical specialties which involve seriously ill. Your whole go-to-market will be very different. You cannot do justice to both if you're doing both at the same time.
No,
And you will get it.
serious ill cases I'm not, so our company will not involve into the acute emergencies or anything.
Then you don't need home skilled nurses.
No, it's for the small like post-surgical dressings and post-surgical management, these kind of
But it's
things.
still here. Even that you have to come, the way you can't send, you can't take a campaign into an IT industry, like into the Infosys campus and get out of that segment.
Right.
To get that segment, you have to go to all the medical specialties. Okay, you are going after orthopedic care or surgical care, you have to go after those specialties, the hospitals and the doctors, and they are your referrals. They are going to look, I mean, like there is a service that gives you home care. You don't have to come visit me after 10 days, but sign up for the service. Now, you get the point, right? That the channels are very trained. One case, you have to go after the IT industry and all the working professionals and the business folks. Directly, you're going after the consumers. And the other case, you're going after the medicals, the hospitals and the doctors. Now, you can't do justice to both of these at the same time. And this is a pivot where even if you think both have serious opportunity, you have to put one on hold and go after only one. It's very important. Without that, you cannot do justice to it. Like as a small and like kind of startup with very limited resources, whatever resources you have is not enough for either one. If you have more resources, you can do one of them much better.
I'm Dr. Prasad Rao, again in healthcare this thing.
Nice.
We started school health around 1 year, 4 months back. We have served 38 schools of 36,000 children so far. School health program, we did that. The basic idea was to prevent the non-communicable diseases in long run. So today the PwC has given a report on India. India is the #1 country for the heart disease or cardiac deaths in the world, #1 in the world, between the age group of 35 to 65. So it is losing 18.9 million years, productive years, and if you convert into money-wise, $200 billion India is losing. So 90% of these diseases can be prevented. That is the reason we started school health. So to give the health education, awareness and regular screening. So initially there was a lot of barrier for the enter into the schools. Somehow we have entered 38 schools, that is the private schools as well as some 2 government schools and the social
Who
welfare.
pays for this? Is school pays or the parents pay or?
Yeah, it is a mixed model with subscription model, usually a per student per annum basis. Maybe some managements are willing to pay, some managements are taking from the children and paying to this thing.
So how much does the 30 schools get roughly in the range? Is it lakhs or is it thousands? Total revenue.
Yeah, first year we lost around 12 lakhs in the
The
first
loss doesn't matter, but how much did you get? Revenue.
revenue this year.
First year.
First year around 25 lakhs we have to get that.
That's not bad. So how do you retain them? Because it seems like the barrier to entry is low. Now
Yeah.
else can come and start the service relatively easily.
So this is hardly 1.5-year-old company. We have already done the school twice. Suppose one Jansen Grammar School in Apsiguda, Last year also we did the school, again similarly this year also we did. 90-95% of the schools which we have done, they are coming back for the next
Very
year.
good data point.
Next
Next
year.
is very important, yeah.
Next academic year. So our intention was to continue, give the continuum care for the student from the nursery to 10th class. What we are doing, we are creating an EHR for them and we are maintaining that, and whatever the problems we are following it up also. Similarly, and we found that only 18 weeks are available out of 52 weeks for us to work in the schools. Rest of the holidays, exams and other issues. So even then, a team of 10 members, here the physician, dentist, optometrist for vision, audiologist for the hearing and speech, a clinical psychologist, nutritionist and so on, of 10 members will go to the school along with the equipment and screen each child. So we are able to manage around 36,000 children in a span of 1 year, 4 months.
And that's where bulk of your cost is?
Cost?
That's bulk of your cost, the cost of the doctors and...
Yeah.
Okay. But have you found some creative models, part-time doctors, are they on retainer, the doctors?
Yeah, in this we have what you said is right. Suppose audiologist services we are using as a part-time whenever we have the school screening program, then only they are coming up. So, but rest of the doctors like a dentist and physician are the full-time practitioners. So now what we are thinking is we want to go into the similar manpower can be used in corporate wellness, where other 3-4 months which we are able to use our manpower, we want to enter into the corporate wellness, where exactly it is more or less similar. So we can venture.
Many have tried this. I mean, at least I myself in the last 4 or 5 years have come across like many that have tried this. But 36 schools, retaining them is a fantastic data point. I don't think many have gone that far. They might have got some schools, retained some schools, but like somewhere they found the cost prohibitive. But they go also slightly different angles. I know one, they were trying to set up the clinics in the schools, with unfortunately very small school scheme. I mean, we were a very expensive school. Those are the ones have a small, I don't know what they call it. There's some term they use for the, they don't call it clinic. Sorry?
Sick bay.
No. No, they have some fantastic name. The
Sick bay.
schools have.
Sick bay.
Sick bay is one, but there's some other term they use which is a little more positive. It sounds, means something like a recovery. Rest and recovery is the term, I forgot the word, a very nice word. Just on the
Triage or something like that. Triage.
Something, I forgot the word, but it is like basically meaning rest and recovery. But it's essentially a clinic, they have nurses at least, and they have doctors on call. So they have nurses that is stationed. Okay, there are some models, so different people try different models, but I think it's a good start. But I would still say it only needs somebody that understands kind of basic healthcare and has access to these panel of doctors to get hold of some schools. So the barrier to entry is still low, which means like your pivot may be like how much you're using technology at this point.
Here we are using the electronic health record and we are following up each student. Whatever the problems we identified, we thought it is only a 5-10% initially when we enter into the system. But unfortunately the problems were around 35%.
Of the students had some problem.
Yeah, some medical issues or the dental issues or the eye issues like new refractive errors were around 14 to 18%. That is a panic. So neither detected by the parents or by the teachers. So we can do early detection and immediately we can rectify those things. So with all these things, we thought it's around 30, overall it is around 35 to 40% problems we are identifying. We are following it up also, maintaining the EHR for each student.
To make sure the government got some advice and like it's taken care of.
Yes.
And so how do you expand the schools? Why only 36 after 2 years? Second year?
How many?
Why only 36 schools?
No, because the one team will consist, say, one team of 10 members can work in a total entire year, can do only 20,000 to 25,000 children only, it's possible. So we want to scale it up for the next team, we want to see the first year how it is working. Then we have to penetrate in the markets. So a lot of...
Maybe like, I mean, have you tried 2 level screening? Have a low cost, just one normal doctor goes and does the first level screening. And then the specialist come.
Yeah, we are also working because see, what you said is rightly said. Some schools are have the fee structure is much better, and some schools are very low. Even for them also, we are thinking that this time say some subscription of each school, only some nominal amount, and try to give the services. How we can cut short our cost-wise we'll see.
So those are some of the pivots you will need right now. Now that you've proven 36 schools and retained the second year, it's proven, the model works.
Yes.
And since you have range from government schools, some assuming some very expensive private schools, you have a whole range. You kind of also have a good idea of what's appealing to each of the sectors.
Yeah, we have also done the social welfare school. The Telangana government has given us the pilot project for the social welfare schools. They have 134 schools of 65,000 children in entire Telangana. So we have already done the pilot for the 2 schools, one at Isnapur and other at Sangareddy, somewhere, Alwal. And they want provide the 30% of the cost for us, and the 70% we have to procure from CSR initiative or some other donations or something like that. That way they have given us the pilot project. We have successfully completed those projects. We have to see if they like this program. Then we give the entire Telangana, and even we are approaching for Andhra Pradesh.
So this I think is a fantastic, your prime, I mean, as I kind of whatever can read into it, it's in a very prime spot for like a very, very active pivot. The pivot is not going to change what you're doing. You're now just pivoting to see like you have to alter the models a little so you can scale. Because like I still believe the barrier to entry is very low. The Telangana 65 schools project, somebody's better connection can get it next year. Right? And like even the normal private schools, somebody that can get the same panel of doctors, understands primary healthcare, understands preventive healthcare, and like has some contact in the schools, can get in as easily. So you got these 36, somebody else will come and get the next 36. So the key is like you have to figure out what can you alter a little that in a very cost-effective way you can scale very fast. Because that's only barrier to entry you have. Like I mean, how much have you captured and like and you're doing well to retain. So that is to retain. So you're doing right things to retain.
Yeah.
So the more you capture, the more kind of that is your value.
Yes.
So that is the pivot. I mean, I'm sure you're on the job already, but
It is a very cost-effective with that also. We are charging only 200 rupees per student per annum.
no, when you say cost-effective way, like to you. You said today you're losing money because of the cost of doctors and the cost of service.
Yes.
And that's why you're losing money. Though you made 25 lakhs, you lost 12 lakhs because like the cost of the service is very expensive.
This year we have able to meet our expenses. This fund.
So now even if you're meeting your expenses,
Yes.
and the same cost is going to happen every year,
Yeah.
which means for the next 36 schools, you may still just about meet your expenses. So somewhere you have to see what can you do, either leveraging technology or altering the models a little bit, where like you can kind of increase the margin or reduce the cost. So that's on one side. You have to do that
The
anyway.
scalability only is the answer.
Scalability is the immediate requirement. Even if you're losing money, it's okay to lose money for the next 1 or 2 years if you can afford to lose money. You have the investors and the scaling is the most important. And I do believe like you can use technology to scale faster. The same panel of doctors that you have, if they're doing 20,000 students, can you make them somehow cover 40,000 students? By having a tiered approach or leverage technology, like where like some remote things they do, something, I don't know.
Yeah.
But rapidly scale is one thing, and like in the process, like can you do more with the same panel of doctors? So that like this panel should do 30,000 students, get another panel for the next 30,000, and like so I think it's a fantastic time to do this pivot to be able to scale.
Thank you.
All the best. So we get
Yeah, thank you. My name is Shiva. Actually, I have 2 things to share with you. One is a 360-degree feedback tool, the multi-rater survey tool that we have developed, which falls under the performance management systems, HR system. So this tool is primarily initially pivoted for banks, like Axis Bank is one of our customers. And then later on, we figured out that when we are actually talking to them, there are quite a few changes that they require, because the way that tool was developed is like a rater and rating and stuff like that, and then you get a feedback and stuff like that. And what they were requiring is they want to assign a few raters, predefined raters, rather than a free flow kind of a thing. The way that we have done is more of a democratic way of people choosing their raters. Rather, they were asking for more like people who are like, some kind of a autocratic and a mix of democratic, in the sense that they would assign a few
which is
raters.
most companies I know do.
Exactly, yeah. So then we have to change a little bit in terms of getting those things into the place. And then later on, it went very well. And also, most of the other things that we have done for Cognizant, BPO, and L&T and other companies. And this is actually a revenue generating product, which is there for about 2 years, and quite a few customers are there. So the pivot that we thought of, one is primarily the types of reports that each one generates. That's one type of pivoting that we have to do on a regular basis, because each customer is different and the needs are totally different. And the way that the kind of reporting, for example, some companies, obviously the 360-degree feedback tool is more or less like anonymous, and you cannot have, if the number of raters is less than 3, you obviously will know who rated you on what basis or whatever, right? There could be a problem with the biases and stuff like that. So, and also the other thing is obviously a 360-degree feedback tool will have something called a verbatim, where people would basically type in what they think about you. And that's kind of, a little bit difficult thing in the sense that unless you really categorize and make sure that those are completely anonymous, it's going to be a big problem, kind of thing. So, and also the pivot came into picture when we started doing the 360, but later on, the climate survey in a company has become much more relevant. So we have to, we fundamentally have the survey engine and all the stuff in place, but we have to do a little bit of modifications to the server, to the code, to make it look like a climate survey kind of a thing. It's called climate survey. Climate survey in an organization.
Oh, it's a complete general organization?
Yeah, general organization where you will not have the a rater kind of a situation, where you would just put out the questionnaire and say that, okay, how is your happiness index? How is your boss? How is what is going on? Like this kind of things, right? So you would basically put down all the stuff and then generally find out what is the mood of the company, the aggregation and stuff like that. So that's another kind of pivot why we are working with this.
Logical pivot, yeah.
Exactly, logical pivot. And the other one is, while we are working with some of these companies, obviously they do want, smaller companies want to have the KPIs in place because they are key performance indicators, and some of them have already implemented balanced scorecards kind of stuff, right? So some of them, they want to have those things integrated into the platform, and that's one of the things that we are actually kind of, if you look at, that's a kind of a pivot that we're trying to get into. So it's a little bit more bigger challenge because the KPIs are a totally different area, and it's a product by itself when compared to probably this whatever that we are doing. 360 could be a small part of the whole bigger KPI, because 360 is also a part of the whole thing.
And have you thought of whole performance management again?
Yes, actually we were thinking about that.
And that's again another logical extension.
Yeah, another logical extension that we were trying to think about. But again, the resources, obviously constrained by the money and those kind of resources. But eventually, I think again the key is basically reaching out to more customers. And then because the platform is more or less like very stable at this point of time, and we have quite a few administrative things on one side of the story where pretty much everything can be branded, customized, your questionnaire can be, it's almost like a SaaS multi-tenancy kind of a model where we can give the company administrator the access, and he can go and change the logos and load in their questions, and then they can launch the survey. All the emails, schedulers, everything will go off automatically.
What's the current status, like revenue-wise or number?
Revenue-wise, we are actually doing close to per annum. The number of assessments that we would consider, because that's
That's price unit.
But let's say unit, yeah, spice unit, which is priced right now, it's about 1,500 rupees per unit or something like that. In the sense that it's per assessment. And then if there is also a tier where we have the restriction on the number of raters. If there are going to be unlimited number of raters, then there is the price tier will actually go up. And this also includes some kind of a workshop to interpret the results and stuff like that. In the sense that because the report is like a 30-40 page report that generates.
For each person?
For each person, yeah, for each person, which is very elaborate in terms of what are your weaknesses, where people are rating you low, what is your self-rating, what is your peers are rating, and what your supervisor thinks. So there's quite a few parameters that we collect the data points, and then these are all like charted at a could be an organization can have, let's say, a competency buckets at the top, 3 or 4 maybe, strategy and vision and customer service and blah blah blah. And then they can have individual components, and then individual components will have individual questions. So we are actually reporting at a very granular level report. So this is quite a comprehensive report, and you will find out what are the real strengths and weaknesses, and also how to interpret some of the results and
So
stuff.
what are the numbers right now? Number of
Right now,
companies and
we are doing roughly about 10,000 assessments per annum at this point of time, because the platform has become more stable and kind of being worked on fixing some of the things and stuff like that. But it's really good now. So the key here is actually the scale. I mean, reaching out to more number of people. I mean, that's the scale.
This 10,000 how many companies?
This is across 6 or 7.
So why so low?
Yeah, the reason is, see, the 360 is very, sometimes it's, they call it as a very threatening kind of a thing, in the sense that if it's not, the organization is not mature enough, it's kind of because people may think that it's used for their performance hikes and, or even, for layoffs and stuff like that, right? I mean, there are quite a few not problems actually, it's quite a few misconceptions associated with it. And unless the organization is mature enough, they would not.
Because for you to scale, so I'm assuming if it's 10,000 at this company, they're all large companies. You need refer guarantee and
Yes.
they're large companies.
Yeah, but what they want to do is they're trying to do only for the top management who are mature enough.
Yeah.
So the numbers are obviously less.
So that's another opportunity probably. Because for me it was done once by somebody in Boston. And which is they do primarily executive 360.
Okay.
And it was like several $1,000s just for the survey.
Yep.
There was a couple of phone calls,
Mhm.
and then the survey was customized based on like what like input from me, from my manager, from HR, and then the survey was executed, which is completely automated.
Yeah.
The names are set up,
Yes.
and then the reminders go and like. Then I'm sure she must have spent half a day or so interpreting, maybe one day interpreting.
Yeah.
Then there were 2 sessions.
Mhm.
The whole thing cost almost $10,000.
Wow. Okay.
And so something to keep in mind. I'm sure like
Yeah, we are very cheap. I mean, when compared
He's
to.
saying why it is in Boston, but it was done here. I was here.
Okay.
It was done for me. Though we paid out of a Boston office. It
Right.
was done by our corporate HR.
Okay.
But we got $10,000 equivalent in India. Like I'm sure that at least $2,000 probably.
Yeah.
$1,000 probably at a
Right.
executive level.
Yeah.
So like maybe you're at that juncture right now, but you did refer scaling. I think that is the. I think the scaling is the like it has to go in numbers.
Yeah.
You have the assessments is one set of numbers, but number of companies also
Is something.
like,
Yeah.
it can't be just the large companies. I'm sure there are opportunities. This is a problem in every company.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We are not very big. We are only 2-3 people here in India.
Yeah.
We do 360 surveys all the time.
Wow.
Our managers and even leads.
Okay.
And you're right, there's a culture thing, you have to establish the right context for it.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of education, but that maturity is not necessarily relating to size.
Absolutely.
There's some little education that can come from you also, helping educate the organization.
Right.
And the need is there everywhere.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, one manager has only some 10 reportees and 10 peers and one boss.
Yeah.
Like the 360 is only at any level you go,
Yeah.
the number of people will be only 25 involved.
Exactly.
Yes, the impact will be higher as you go higher in the organization, but it is the same. So any size is probably there. So I think scaling is your You have to see how you can pivot and scale.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true. And also, I mean, in fact, the interesting, another pivot that I want to bring out is like the PVR cinemas. We did for PVR cinemas as well. And all of them don't have access to the computers. They want a pen and paper test. So we did that, and then we got that, data entry has been done for the
You
people.
use OCR?
Yeah, that's right, yes. Yeah.
You use OCR?
Yeah, we use OCR, and some of it actually is in Hindi, so may not be exactly be translated. So we have to do a little bit of a data entry as well, and that was a pretty interesting another aspect of this whole thing.
Good, good. All the best. I think clearly scale, even this, while this variability is not that low,
Yeah.
but still not, I still know many companies that think they can do it using SurveyMonkey.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, yeah.
The reports are, unfortunately, we are also brought those.
Yeah.
We do use SurveyMonkey, but then we have a fairly reasonable size HR team, so we've got all the reports, everything wired.
Yeah.
So results board, we did the first time, I did a lot of work.
Yeah.
So it's all wired. Once the numbers get in from the SurveyMonkey,
Yes.
it generates reports.
Yes, it generates.
But still, just getting in fast.
Yeah, I think the USP that we are trying to project is a good technology platform along with the domain expertise. I don't think SurveyMonkey cannot provide that because somebody has to really.
That is the USP. Especially
Yeah.
you go to senior managers,
Yes.
senior levels in the company.
Yeah.
Then the personalized interpretation is a significant value.
Significant value.
But you
Yeah.
charge a premium for it. All the clients seem very low for that.
All right. Yeah. Sure.
Right here.
Yeah.
I hope it was good for you also. The discussion helped everybody. All the best. Thank you.